Hello and welcome to Through the Tunnel of Grief. I am Theodora, your host, and in this space we journey together through the many shapes and seasons of grief, from the raw ache of losing a loved one to the quiet heartbreak of divorce or separation. This podcast is here to inspire, inform, and remind you that you are not alone. I share my own story from seeing grief through the innocent eyes of a child, to navigating its shifting shadows as a teenager, young adult, and now as an adult. Together, we will explore how grief evolves, how it changes us, and how sharing our stories can help us heal. Here, you'll find a space to feel encouraged, inspired, informed, accepted, and supported. So, let's walk this tunnel together. You do not have to walk through it alone. Today, I will be sharing my grief story, focusing on the passing on of my dad. And in the next week, I'll talk about the practical things that I did or things that helped me walk through grief after my dad's passing on, and later on in the future I'll also talk about my story from the perspective of a child of divorce, and that also how it played out in my life. My father, the late Johnny Tiang, was not a perfect man. He had his faults and made mistakes, which left many with scars and others with wounds that they're still struggling to heal. Despite all, he is a good man. It has been 25 years since my dad passed. He passed on in 2000, just 2 months before my 8th birthday. It was a hard time and confusing time for me as a child. I missed my dad and could not share the love I felt for him, and could not receive the love that he always gave me. The hardest part was that the last time I saw him, when he was fully conscious, was not the best side. He was furious, and I never saw the loving side of him. The few years I shared with him as a child were the best parts of my life. The love he gave me now feels like a memory, yet so real because my heart has never forgotten him. It feels like every year that passes, I love him more and more, even when sometimes I forget what he truly looked like until I refer to one of his old photos. I remember how he would bathe my siblings and I, something that was rare back in the 90s in the African context. He always carried me on his lap, and whenever he returned from work, I remember he brought us Ribena, which was a famous drink in the early 90s in Uganda. During our meal times back in the day, it was a must for him to add me a piece of meat or whatever food we would be having that day. He was such a great sharer. From the simplest things like at mealtime, he wouldn't be ashamed or embarrassed to add a visitor a piece of meat from his plate, or offer even a huge bowl as a gift, or just help anyone in need. He was also a typical traditional African man who loved the local brew, which we locally call ajono. And he loved homemade food. He always ate from home with his family. I remember back in the late 90s when the grinding mills were just gaining popularity in my small hometown, Tororo, in eastern Uganda. He always insisted that the millet bread, commonly known as atap or kwon in Tororo, he would eat. The flour had to be ground on a grinding stone. I wonder what he would do in the present day Now, when all these grinding stones are no more, I wonder. My grief journey has been a complicated one, owing to the different circumstances that compounded into intense sorrow and pain. It started when I was just about 8 years, and it slowly but steadily trickled into my teens, youth, and adulthood. It has been a hard and painful journey that no words are enough to describe. The fact that my parents separated when I was young was something I was still struggling with, and then my dad died, and the events that followed his death was so gruesome. Even though I was struggling with the fact that my parents had separated, I was still hopeful that they would unite, and I had the chance of seeing my dad whenever I could. In the 90s, I could say there was somewhat the dark edges. During my father's funeral, I remember everything like it happened yesterday. There was this strong rejection and hatred energy around. On those few days before and after my father's burial, we felt like strangers, intruders in our own home. Like tourists, and everyone who looked at us just looked away and others just murmured or referred to us with facial gestures. It was a typical African funeral where when the man of the home dies, there are quarrels, heated arguments, where people don't care that children are in their midst. These experiences can be painful to an adult, but as a child, this was an intense, traumatizing experience. My mom, siblings, and I never had a safe space to grieve and heal. But with every passing day, week, month, and year that followed, the grief became more and more intense. The people we thought we could rely on mocked and laughed at us. I became so angry with my dad, and I blamed him for every bad thing that happened to me. I wondered how such an intelligent man would fail to put things in order before his passing. I wondered why he never reconciled with his family. The grief and pain I was experiencing made me forget everything beautiful we shared with my dad. I never lived life as I should have, but got stuck in the past with a blend of love, betrayal, and the bitterness you are afraid to let go of. All these mixed, undefined emotions made me see men through a different lens. It made me question family life and created an identity I did not recognize. We had so many people around us who would have then lifted us up and comforted us, but the world felt so lonely, and the rejection became our new normal. I am really grateful to my mother. She never gave up on us, and she pushed on despite all. Through the corridors of grief, I perfected a personality that hid my pain and sorrow behind a cheerful and radiant, infectious smile, and did not give room or reason for people to stay in my life. Most times, I burnt the bridges of friendship or relationships even before they formed. I was just trying to protect myself with the most controversial feelings and actions. I can say I made some bad choices in life, searching for what I didn't know, but subconsciously I realized during my journey of life evaluation, based on the behavior patterns I had and choice patterns, I was looking for a safe place to call home. I was looking for someone who would replace my dad and give me the love I missed. I looked for friends and loved them so much, hoping they would love me the same and become the part of my family that was missing. I lived most of my life so broken and lost, questioning so many beautiful things and pushing them away because to me they would not last. And it felt like I was just being tricked, like my love was being tricked, tricking me like my dad's death, which left me empty and lost. The grief I experienced also made me tolerant to so many bad things and ignore bad behavior from people just because I didn't want to let them go. It made me afraid of being alone. Then I would rather have someone who is treating me badly than stay alone. I grew up without an identity or where to belong. I kept searching and compromising just to fit in, to get a place to belong. But amidst all that, the doors of healing finally found me. It was about 15 years after my father's passing that I came to realize I was just tired of life. I didn't know what it was, but whatever I had felt empty, meaningless, and I didn't want it anymore. Grief can throw you into paths, places, and life-threatening situations beyond imagination. Grief sometimes shuts down your normal reasoning capacity and senses, hindering you from detecting and avoiding life-threatening situations. There were moments in my life when I made poor judgments or decisions, like trusting the wrong people and ending up in the company of manipulatives. People will not understand you are struggling or need help. They will abuse vulnerability or use your troubles to their advantage to sabotage or destroy you. In the shadows of grief, I was always anxious, restless, sad, and every time I tried to pray, I just ended up in tears and deep sadness, wondering why God left me in the wilderness. It reached a point that I stopped praying, but God's mercy is beyond human imagination. He never left me, even when it seemed I had distanced myself from Him. Grief brings a lot of loneliness and an abyss of unexplainable dark emotions that somehow you must desire something different and better to finally break free. However much I desired something more for my life to move on, I was afraid of letting go and unsure of what would become of me. Would I be okay with the people I considered friends or the circles I kept? Yet they were destroying me. Oh, how would life be if I stopped fighting so hard for the people I so badly wanted to be part of my life, even when it didn't mean anything to them? I can tell you, I struggled with so many personal and internal battles until I finally found my ground that I wanted more for my life. And if there was something that I had tried to change and failed, did all humanly possible and couldn't break through, and it still left me broken, I chose peace and freedom, not enslavement in the pretext of searching for what doesn't make me a better person, or living in denial of what I already know the answer to. I painfully accepted that my dad was never coming back, and the damage that was left that only required him to write. And since there was no one else going to step up, I had to pick up my broken pieces, mend them, and move on. Thank you for joining me on today's podcast. I look forward to having you next week when I'll be taking you through the practical things that help me walk through and overcome grief. Till next time, take care.